Hi, everybody. It's Robert Painley. Welcome to Spirit Focus with Robert Painley. Thanks for joining us this week. Today, I got started on a topic a little bit late, so I apologize that I didn't give everybody a lot of time to figure out what the show was going to be about today. But I had some changes this week and some things that I think were going to be important to talk about, and we'll get there kind of in a second. But before I do, EWN lost a colleague this week. So you probably saw the prayer vigils and celebrations of life for Camille. So I just want to wish, I didn't know Camille, but from everything that I read and saw, she was well loved and well liked on this network. I wish I would have had the opportunity to get to know her and meet her, but just through all of the lovely comments and wonderful things that have been said about her, I'm more than confident she was just the most lovely person in the world. And I just want to send out heartfelt wishings to her family and friends and all the colleagues here who are dealing with her transition. So I just want to wish those well wishes to her family and say a prayer for her when you have an opportunity. Thank you. The second part of today is, and kind of why we chose the subject of the show today, is on the 13th of September, I'm going to be doing a live event with Rosie Shapiro. And that live event is all going to be about, hauntings and hope and healing. And so there's a variety of things that we want to discuss during that. And some of that kind of ties into what I want to talk about this evening. So if you haven't gone on and purchased tickets yet, you can go to rosieshapiro.com and get your tickets for that event. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 13th of September. So please go on and get your tickets today. It's very easy to do. It is a Zoom event, much like the Democratic National Convention is happening this evening. Same type of event. But we're going to be interacting with everybody, and we're going to be doing some readings with loved ones and talking about healing the mind, soul, and body, and the things that we do as mediums that make an impact in other people's lives. So there's going to be some giveaways and some other stuff that we're doing that ties kind of indirectly with what we're doing tonight on this show. Because one of the things that Rosie and I have talked about lately, she asked me to join her in a haunting that she is going to be doing while I'm actually in New York with her. And I agreed, and we talked about that a little bit. And this haunting is going to be a challenging haunting because there is a spirit involved here who has, let's just say, not the world's kindest personality. We'll talk about that another time. But this type of personality sometimes, and when spirits like this don't cross, there tends to be reasons and rationale for that crossing. And so I want to tie that into a crossing that I just did the other evening with a client on Sunday night, 2 days ago. And it was a completely different feeling. So as mediums, we do have so many ways. Now, there's no two experiences that are alike from a medium perspective, as there aren't two experiences alike for people who are dealing with this type of activity in their home. So tonight I kind of want to talk about a little bit about what causes some spirits not to cross over, because it's directly germane to what is happening when I go to meet with Rosie for the haunting that we're going to be working on together, and on the one that I just worked on Sunday. So first of all, I kind of want to start with why some spirits don't cross. And I kind of wrote down just hastily today. I was thinking about this in so many ways that spirits and why they don't cross. But I should go back one step and talk about, what you should do if you're a person dealing with a situation or a light worker, and really asking yourself if you're safe in working with some of this energy. Because Rosie, when we're talking about safety issues of the person trying to do this. And I'm a huge believer in what we do as light workers, that we do have, we have a gift, we have an intuition, we have all of these things that make us unique, but some are better equipped to work with certain aspects of spirit than others. For example, I don't mind dealing with possessed places, but I certainly don't want to do that with a possessed person. I can do more harm than good if I were to do that type of activity. So I tend to shy away from that and would contact a priest or somebody that was better qualified to work with that type of energy. Similarly, down here where I live in South Florida, sometimes it's challenging because we do have Santeria, we do have different types of magia negra, and also different types of aspects of spirituality that it's not my forte. And there are people here who are better qualified. And I think I would do a disservice to my clients if I didn't or wasn't qualified to work with them. So as a lay person, there are a lot of people out there who are very spiritual in nature, who do cleansings of homes and do certain things. But I would suggest that if you know what you're good at, if you know that your limitations, or if you haven't been doing that long, or you haven't done this type of work, please don't try to get in over your head. It can be dangerous for you. I've been to, I do a lot of, I take a lot of mediums with me, burgeoning mediums with me to do hauntings that I work on, and they're usually the weak link. I'm not going to be bothered by spirit in what I do. I'm protected, and I know what I'm very, very good at. And so I don't put myself in a situation or accept a client where I could not help that individual. But sometimes when I'm bringing somebody, I will make them stay outside the home, because I've actually had mediums with me that have been injured in this process. They've been attacked, they've been pushed, they have literally been injured, where blood has been drawn by being pushed down, out of something, or down a flight of stairs or something of this nature. So you need to be careful. And I always warn people coming with me that they are the weak link for the most part, unless they're really well protected or well versed on how to work with this type of energy. So do try to make sure that you're aware. Turn this light up. Do try to be aware that this, I'm losing, sorry. There's something coming from someplace in this room that is problematic for you if you're not well prepared. So do take that into account. So let's start with the energy of what you might sense when you go. So, some of the energies that you will run into in this line of work are going to be confused souls. And I look at confused souls as souls that don't understand that they have crossed. So obviously, so these are souls that are lost for a particular reason. They either had a traumatic death that was, from a car accident, or a gunshot wound, or an overdose, or something of this nature, where they weren't prepared to go. I've had drownings and all kinds of things of this nature, where the soul wasn't aware that it had actually was supposed to cross. They're still trying to cling on to this plane for a multitude of reasons. These are usually good souls. These are people that you don't have to worry about too much. These are souls that are just confused. And what do you do with somebody who's confused? You try to unconfuse them and get them to focus on what's happening, where they are, what's going on. I've had to do that with a young girl who was in a car accident. She was 16 and didn't realize. She kept showing me what happened with the car accident, but didn't realize what had happened to her or how to communicate with her family. She just wanted to so desperately to contact her family, and she didn't know how. So my job at that point was so that she understood what had happened to her, and that she could communicate with her family again, but she had to cross over first, and then she could be with them in a different way. But in the state that she was just going to be, I hate to say eternally confused, but she would be confused for a very long period of time. And so it was crossing her over so that she could be close and communicate with her family again. Similarly, I worked with a soul in a house that was draining all the energy out, because this gentleman was drowning. And in his own world, in his own space, all he could feel was the pain of drowning, that the confusion, the angst of trying to cling on to life. And this turmoil that the soul was under this entire time. And it was basically kind of spiritually slapping him in the face, trying to get him to understand that he was actually passed, that he had died in this trauma. And it had happened years before, and I already sensed that he had 2 children and a wife. And he was very easy to cross, because once he understood that he had passed, he understood what he needed to do and to cross him. It was just getting him to understand that he needed to transition from this life to that life. Again, I hate to call it death, because to a soul, the soul doesn't die. It's the body that fails. And so this transition of the soul from this physical body in this physical plane into a more ethereal plane is one of those aspects of spirituality that I try to respect. And I don't like to, when I talk to spirits on the other side, I don't like to call them dead or something, because to them, they aren't. They're still alive. They just, it's a different perspective than we would look at it here through our limited language. So with these confused souls, one of the things that you really need to do, these are relatively easy crossings. And I would suggest that if you feel that there is a confused soul, if you're not feeling any danger with the soul at all, that if you have a gift, if you have a talent, these are souls that you can go ahead and attempt to cross. And again, this is the purity of your intent, what you're trying to do. And I always say at this level that, you know, that I say in my prayers, you know, I may not be qualified to do this. I may not know all the right words, but my purity of intent is to help this soul move on. I'm lucky enough that I get to hear, see, sense, spirit in a very clear way, but some don't. Some maybe just clairaudient and are hearing the spirit. So whatever your talent happens to be, try and use that talent to help the soul cross. And like I said, it is probably the easiest type of crossing to do. And I have no problem with most people trying that, regardless of how long you've been, aware of your gift or practicing your gift or working in that way as a profession. Then you get into more different types of spirits that are, one would be an attached spirit. Attached spirits now are attached for a particular reason. These are more challenging spirits, and this is where I would start to recommend that if you don't know what you're doing and haven't practiced crossing souls in some way, please, this is where I would start to look for a medium, because that attachment, you really should find out why they're attached. They could be attached for a good reason to you or to a place. So it could be to the land, it could be to an object, it could be to something that was there, but the attachment really comes from an aspect of, this is mine. It's possessiveness in some way. This is mine. This is something that I want. I can't live without. I don't want to cross because no one will take care of it. There is this whole aspect of being sometimes where it does become a bit challenging for the soul to transition, because they have that earthly desire to possess, control, need in some way that they don't feel is going to be fulfilled if they do actually cross. So this is where find out why. This is where, from a medium perspective, I would suggest that you actually get somebody who has done this and has a particular skill set, because you need to find out why. I always, can you cross them? You could banish them perhaps or do other things, but I like to try and figure out what the reason is, because it makes that crossing so much easier for the soul. To get that peace of mind, to get that rationale, to get that understanding of why they're here, why they're trying to remain attached to it. I do that with objects I bring into my own home. If I go to a garage sale or an estate sale or something of this nature, those things are cleansed before I bring them into my house, because you don't know the energy attached to these things, and you could be bringing something into your home. So I don't mind that you do that, but please, make sure that you're doing a cleansing of that object. And I always give thanks to the person who previously owned that object, understanding that this was a cherished object, that this was something that they liked and bought and took care of, and now you're going to be the steward and the caretaker of that particular object. Give those objects, relevance and reverence in your home, in the aspect that you do take care of it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't purchase it. So you do want it for a particular reason. So do try to make sure that you're honoring any soul who may have been attached to that particular object. Land, houses, other things are a little bit more challenging, because it's a larger space. It's maybe sometimes harder to try and get a grasp on what energy is there and why it's there. And it could be multiple energies or a vortex or anything that could be there. Yeah, but in this instance with attached souls, please try to figure out what they are, who they are, and and somebody who's qualified to actually understand that, so you can move these spirits on. Another category of spirit and why some don't transition, and these would be malevolent spirits. These are spirits that um, were extremely angry in life, didn't feel as if they got a fair shake in life. When I come across these souls, this anger is palpable, and this is where you would find perhaps objects being thrown, moved, things missing, being attacked in some way. This is not great energy to work with. It's not demonic, which is a whole other side of the spectrum. But these malevolent spirits, and they could have been decent people in life, but something happened. There's something, they are changed in some way. They could have been in an asylum. They could have been, so had mental issues. They could have had a mental disorder of some sort that caused this shift in their brain and their cognitive ability that changed them. I've had this with extremely racist individuals, or people who just thought that people weren't as good as they were, and they have a superiority of some things. And it could be from a religious aspect, it could be from a business aspect, could be just from how they perceive themselves in life, through their ego, or through what they feel they had special gifts about. So these spirits, when they don't transition, sometimes this anger tends to build, and it can make them worse, and it can make them more malevolent, to make them more angry, and that just starts to amp up energy it could be a possessive nature, and things that they want or need or can't live without, they feel. So if you run into these are something you should never attempt unless you have somebody who's qualified to do it. In Rosie and my case, we're actually going to do a spirit of this nature who is causing significant issues and actually doing harm. So this, with two mediums, sometimes it's actually helpful. I would suggest, if you have somebody, if you are a medium and you are gifted, if you do trust somebody that you can amp up your energy with and bring that energy together, that's always helpful and useful to do in these types of circumstances. So do try to figure out, again, your limitations, know what you're good at. Experience in this is paramount to being successful, because you don't want to go there, make the situation worse, whoever is occupying that space, whoever may be hiring you as a client to do this, or even if it's in your own home, you don't want to make a situation worse. So find somebody who is qualified to help you do so. And lastly, we will kind of touch on the demonic. This is an area that I don't like to talk about. It's not something that is, and people seem to feel that there is so much of this energy. Again, as human beings, if something goes wrong in the house, we automatically go to worst case scenario most of the time. I have done a plethora. I can't, hauntings. I've seen more spirits than I ever thought I'd see in life ever. And the vast majority are of a kind nature. They're either lost or want to know what's going on, or quite frankly, most of the time when I visit clients, they're not actual ghosts on this plane. They've all transitioned. They've all gone on to live their spiritual journey, but they do check in with their loved ones on the side from time to time. But when you get to more of a demonic nature, these most of the time are not beings that ever walked on this plane. Or if they did, it's as an incredibly low life form. Some of these have been here for centuries and eons and are incredibly dangerous and incredibly powerful. So these are entities that if you are not experienced whatsoever, you don't want to confront. These are things that you would want to make sure that you absolutely contacted somebody else who is qualified to do this. And please take heed in this. This is, sometimes this kind of stuff is brought forth with even the mundane things like a Ouija board, or through, casting a spell that you don't know what you're doing, and you bring something up that you didn't realize. This is an area where you don't want to dabble, because dabbling here could really cause some serious issues. Know what you're doing, know who to call in case there's an issue, but don't try to work with that type of energy itself unless you are eminently qualified to do so. Okay, so talking about those types of spirits and those types of entities, how do you avoid getting involved with them? There are so many places that you come into contact with spirit. I see spirit in my house. I see spirit in the driveway, in my car, at the shopping center. I see them all over. Many mediums do. That's not unique. We do run into them all the time. And there's a lot more than people sometimes realize. Um, uh, Again, I've had this since I was a child, and they would just line up, in my bedroom waiting to come to talk to me, to try and either move on or ask questions, but understand that, with this gift comes a light and a vibration that other people who don't see sense, or, hear in this regard, they don't get this. And that's why there's a lot of skepticism out there, because many people can't believe what they don't see, sense, or feel. And for those of us who do, it's challenging to convince people until these type of people have an issue. Then they tend to believe, because there's no rational explanation for it. But if you are sensing and feeling these types of entities around your home, try to avoid places where you're going to run into certain types of energy, because some are much worse than others. For example, so I wrote some of these down too. I never feel bad in a cemetery. Cemeteries for me are kind of contemplative. They're quiet. There's usually a wide open setting. There's no people around. And I actually, as a medium, kind of find peace there. I do run into some spirits there on occasion, but it's not what people sometimes think is a hotbed of activity. There are cemeteries that do have a lot of this type of activity. A lot of times it could be unconsecrated ground. It could be places where bodies were moved. It could be, you never know when you're going into a space what happened there, because they're at peace. This is where we put people to their remains to remember them. So when you go there, you're thinking about them, you're wishing them well, you may be sorry, you may have sorrow associated with it. These are all aspects of things that that bring spirits who have already crossed to you to interact with you, to comfort you, to bring you peace, to let you know they're around, or to try to give you influence to make your life better if it's not in some way. So those type of the spirits are that what I mostly find at a cemetery. But there are some cemeteries that are notorious for having horrible energy about them. And I lived in New Orleans for a while, and some of those cemeteries did. And other places, sometimes, obviously battlefields, where there are cemeteries at battlefields. The amount of energy there is sometimes just incredibly challenging to deal with as a medium. So my recommendation for people, if you have a gift of some sort but haven't been well versed, or you are an empath, or you are sensitive to spirit in some way, you could try to avoid cemeteries. But if you're trying to maybe understand your gift better, this is an area that myself personally, there are other mediums who may not recommend this, but I don't have a problem with people going to a cemetery and trying just to sit there and contemplate. Obviously, before you go, the first thing I'd recommend is protect yourself. Make sure that, anything that comes in that you might come in contact with, any spirit that might come in contact with you, is completely in God's light. Should be the first thing out of your mouth when you walk in there, that you're protected. You surround yourself with God's light before you walk in there, that you ask Archangel Michael for protection, perhaps, or be in a reverent, prayerful mood when you're there, and try to maybe interact if you can. If it turns out to be a bad experience, don't do it. But this is a way that you could help build your confidence, perhaps, in talking with spirit. You're going there specifically for the fact of interacting with spirit. You know that spirit may be present, so when it comes, it's not a surprise, and it doesn't frighten you, where it could in other circumstances. So it's like anything else. If you're prepared for a flood, and you have, you've got the sandbags out, and you've raised your furniture, you've done everything else, you're prepared for what's coming. And that preparation makes the situation, while maybe not a pleasant situation, makes it better, because you are in control of the situation as much as possible. Similarly, this is kind of how I feel in working with spirits in cemeteries. So just kind of prepare yourself and feel what you can. And I would go there and make it an 8-hour trip. Go there and see what you get, and test different ones. If there's a lot of history perhaps around a cemetery, if it's a very old cemetery, you may want to avoid it. You may want to go to one that was consecrated in the last 20 years or something, just so you're putting yourself at maybe less of a risk of very old energy or very powerful energy that could be in those types of places. Well, I've been to places in Europe where these, centuries old burial places, or the Colosseum, or places that I've been where the energy is just off the roof, and literally in the Colosseum's case. But that type of energy is something to be avoided if you're just trying to delve into working with spirit. And so I mentioned battlefields the same way. Battlefields are worse to me, or battlefield cemeteries, in the fact that most of these deaths occur in a horrendous way, sometimes unbeknownst. Again, you have a lot of lost souls there. You have a lot of souls that may want to attach in these types of places because they're drawn to your energy, and you can bring something home with you from a battlefield. So don't remove objects from battlefield, please. I would suggest that you don't take anything from a battlefield. Be reverent when you're there. There are people lost their lives there, their existence on this plane, and with that came anguish and anger and hatred and vitriol and all these other negative emotions that you can think of, and fear. Fear being in battle. So try to avoid that type of interaction if you can. If you do and are involved with it, do be reverent and do say prayers for those that you encounter along the way, to help elevate their soul's journey. Try and move them from the place if you do encounter those types of souls. Again, those types of souls are going to be mostly souls that are just lost for some reason and confused and wondering what's going on. And they may find people from time to time that are empaths or are mediums, but resist crossing. If you have the talent and the ability to try to find out what's holding them back, kind of tap into that and try and ask other, relatives of yours that have crossed, to try and help cross them over to make their transition easier. Some other place that people don't suspect sometimes that are challenging as a medium to be in are hospitals. Now imagine the death and the trauma, and people on drugs who don't know they have passed while they've been under anesthesia and are confused. You have happy occasions there, you have births and that sort of thing. But in a hospital, there is and can be a lot of sorrow. There could be, anything from, dementia and Alzheimer's through gunshot wounds and trauma, and all this energy sometimes gets put in that space. And sometimes that energy doesn't have any place to go. So if you are in a hospital as a medium or a light worker, you're going to sense this. It's palpable to just about everybody, I think, when you get into some hospitals, in particular older inner city hospitals. I think for me have been the worst, not so much a county hospital, but the smaller the hospital, the less likelihood, obviously, but you get to where in a city where you could have a lot of trauma of different types, this is where you're going to run into more challenging energy to work with. So do try to avoid that if you possibly can, even for yourself. If you have surgery that you have to have or something of this nature, if you can have it done outside of a large hospital, or if you're going in, have your friends and loved ones pray for you. Come on the Enlightened World Network, ask people to pray for you through prayer circles and things that they offer, and meditate on trying to stay safe and protected through that process, because you are vulnerable as a light worker when you lose consciousness, because you're no longer in control of what your mind sees, senses, and feels. So do try and be cognizant of that when that happens. But if you are visiting people and you do have that ability, it's okay to maybe see if you can tap into some of that energy, if you can find spirits that may be confused, and help cross them over, because it's just the right thing to do. Okay. Another one, asylums. This is tough energy. I have worked with a lot of souls that had mental issues, and I try to avoid mental institutions from a spiritual perspective as a medium. These are people who, through no fault of their own or whatever their circumstances were in life, that aren't able to control maybe thought processes or their emotions or how they react to stimuli. And that is challenging in energy to work with. So if you are not versed in working with spirit at all, please, 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 I would suggest that you don't make it a fun side trip to go visit an asylum while you're on vacation or something. This could be challenging and dangerous for you, because this is energy that can be attracted to you because of your gift, and they know kind of innately that you may be able to help them in some way, or they're just an attraction because your vibration is different than somebody else's. Do try to avoid them, because you can get an attachment to you, and that can linger if you don't have somebody that knows that has happened. It can be really dangerous for your relationships or your health in some ways, or your own mental stability. So do try to be extremely careful in this type of an environment, and protect, if you are good at what you do, protect yourself, protect yourself, protect yourself in this type of an environment. The other one that's challenging, and I have found personally, because I've unfortunately I've had to go to many funerals in my time, mortuaries and morgues, and funeral homes do have a lot of souls and energy around them. You can imagine that all of that sorrow, all of that angst, all of those types of emotions that come surrounding death for the living, in this case, that remain on this plane, is energy that sometimes people don't get over. I'll go see people 5 years after their mother passed, and they still haven't been able to get over that loss. We all grieve in different ways, but that loss, that anger, that angst, that sorrow does and can keep spirits from going on their spiritual journey. They're trying to comfort you. They're trying to do things to make your life better. And you're the one who is prohibiting this from happening with your emotions and your thought process. Transition, death, as we would call it, death is a part of life. We will all have to transition at some point. But the more centered that you stay, the more the happier you are. And again, life isn't all about happiness. I know that everybody thinks that life is about happiness, but everyone has challenges in their life. Happiness really doesn't come from the things you acquire, or the job that you have. The happiness usually comes from a standpoint of those that we interact with, those people that we love and are loved by, is what gives meaning to our lives. So never shut people out of your lives unless they're toxic to your being. Find people, find souls, find people that resonate with your being, so that you can have a happier life. I don't think I think anyone acquires a quote unquote happy life. There's always something in the background. Nothing's perfect in life. We all have bills to pay. We all report to somebody. We're either too fat, we're too skinny, we're too bald, we're too hairy, we're too whatever it happens to be. There's something, aspects of our life sometimes that aren't perfect. And we don't know anybody else's journey. So do try to hesitate from, worrying about other people's journey. Worry about your own, and how you may be able to help somebody else on their journey. That's where you're going to get that self-satisfaction and that happiness. That's where that's going to be derived from. They always said it's better to give than to receive, and it is absolutely true. In every case that I've ever seen, and everything that I try to do, you kind of try and keep that in the background. That Christmas spirit that we tend to have at one point of the year, let's see if you could maybe try and keep that all year long. Your life would be in a much better state. Okay. The last one, I think here would be prisons. Prisons also are a place where people have done maybe unspeakable things, and have harmed people. And sometimes there's remorse, and sometimes there is not. Sometimes there's all kinds of emotion. Sometimes it is, again, you've got mental disorders that may cause this. There may be addiction energy that has caused people to be in these circumstances. So please try to, if you are a medium, if you are gifted in some way, do try to avoid those types of places, prisons in particular, or even old ones that have been decommissioned years ago, like going to, I can't even think of the name of the island out in San Francisco Bay, or any other, I keep thinking Attica, but it's not Attica. I'm just lost. But try to avoid those types of places, only because there can be angry energy there. And sometimes when that energy acts up, it can, I don't, sometimes it can be malevolent energy, where things will move, things will close, things, and you can actually be hurt in that type of environment. So it's not really one of the better places that you actually want to be as a medium. So those are some of the areas that I would talk about and talk to you about to make sure that you understand why some spirits haven't crossed, and why, and some areas to avoid if you are a medium and have talent in this regard. So I just want to log in here real quick and find out if there's any questions. And I do want to apologize because one of the things that I do notice is that sometimes people tend to log into Enlightened World Network or are on Facebook or on Enlightened World, Enlightened Living. I'm only looking at one channel, so I don't see all of your questions, so I apologize. If you have a question I haven't answered, go ahead and type it in there. And what I'll do after the show is I always go back in and I check all the comments on all the platforms that we are broadcast on, and I will go ahead and answer those questions. So just want to say hi to, let's see, Terry Angel. Hi, Rosie. Hope you're well. Let's see. It doesn't look like anybody has any comments per se. Let me get this. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking real quick. So it doesn't look like there's any questions out there. So I'll end this kind of with like maybe one story of what happened to me this weekend. So we had one. It's like Mark may have a question for me. So hold on a second. These are a different thing. David asks, how can I tune into my spiritual gift? Great question, David. So David, I don't know where you are in your development. So two things. One, please, let's stay in contact after this. You can email me at R.A. Painley. It's right up here someplace, right there. rapainley@gmail.com, and ask me any questions you have. I do work with a lot of burgeoning mediums or psychics, but I don't know all of your gifts, and I would have a lot of questions for you in this regard. So it depends on where you are in your development and how to tune into those. And I have some exercises that you can do to try to develop some of those gifts that are very easy. But one of the things that you will find with any type of gift, particularly in this regard as a medium, as a psychic, particularly trying to develop that intuition that you have, is you need validation for what you're doing, because the validation is what will give you confidence in your ability and what you're doing. So I always tell people, get, the ace of spades, the ace of hearts, the ace of diamonds, and the ace of clubs, and you have 4 cards. You have a 25% chance of picking the right one. Mix them up, put them someplace, validate for yourself, and picture, spread them apart, and, say the one to the right is the club. Flip it over. If it's a club, great. Concentrate on it. Focus on it. Try to develop your intuition this way. Do not get frustrated if it doesn't work. You're not going to be perfect every time. I'm not perfect in what I do. I get shown objects sometimes, and for example, one that didn't make sense, being shown an apple, and every time I saw an apple, I thought teacher, teacher, teacher. But seeing an apple for this one family meant that they owned an apple orchard. So I misinterpreted that. It kind of slowed up my reading for about 5 minutes, trying to say, oh, there's a teacher involved here. But it really wasn't that. It was that the family owned an apple orchard. So don't get too bogged down in being wrong. It just means that you need to fine tune what you do. But there are other exercises that you can do. The getting on a plane, if you're traveling, and kind of picture the flight before you go. Close your eyes, trying to tap into that environment. If you have a middle seat, are going to be sitting. Ask the easy questions first. Am I going to be sitting next to a man or a woman, or are there going to be 2 women? What kind of what kind of outfit, what kind of colors do you see, which might lead to, I feel that there's going to be a woman there, and I feel that she's going to be, there's purple associated with it. When you get on the flight, see if it happens. These are things that you can confirm to yourself. And as you get better at your gift, then you'll be able to see how that works for you. Now, that may not work for you, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a gift either. So we need to find out through the questions that we'll go back and forth with, what gifts you think you have, and then we'll maybe come up and find some ways to tune in and tap into those. And also, as a medium, and I do train a lot of mediums and psychics, So one of the things that I can do too is kind of just feel your energy, feel your vibration, and see what I feel is your gift. And maybe you can kind of tap into your spirit guides and find out what they're trying to tell you and what you're supposed to be doing with the gift that you have. Okay, David? So thank you for the question. And let's get down, we'll get into specifics, but please feel free to reach out to me at rapainley@gmail.com, or go ahead and you can reach me on Instagram or something that way. You can find me and ask the question, or even here. Let me know how to contact you. Give me your phone number or an email address, and I will reach out to you. Okay, David? Siobhan asks, where does God figure into this? Why would God allow a spirit to wander confused? Interesting question. It's one that is more of a theological question, but I can answer it from, you do have that opportunity to go to God's light when you transition. One of the things that we do have as humans, we do have free will. That free will exists until we actually cross. So when we cross, we still have that ability when we don't know that for example, so we'll go to the example where we don't know that we're dead. For example, if right now you took a sedative and it zoned you out completely, you would no longer know that you're on this plane. And so this would zone you out in that way and remove your consciousness from that aspect. You'd still be here and you'd still have your consciousness here on this plane, but and God's not figuring into it at that point. You are just kind of decommissioned at the moment in a way through that. When you go to transition, you're offered obviously the ability to move into God's light very quickly. People resist that for, again, some of the reasons that we talked about. They don't feel a need to go. They don't want to go. They're possessors of something or someone. They don't know that they're gone. Any of these reasons can stop that soul from transitioning into God's light. It's not that God doesn't love that soul, but there's also the opportunity is there, but it sometimes takes somebody on this plane to help nudge that soul. For example, if you took the sedative and you took too much of it, I could get you to a doctor, they give you an antidote and it would revive you and you move on with your existence here on this plane. It's kind of similar to that in the regard that you do have an opportunity to cross. It's not that God does not love that soul, but that soul, for whatever reason, for whatever personal reason, or for whatever reason unknown to that soul, they do stay and they get stuck without transitioning fully. So it's not that God doesn't love them or God doesn't care. It's more of a fact that that soul has chosen for whatever reason many times not to go, and sometimes that soul doesn't know that it's in that space. Many times over years, sometimes that soul will naturally transition. It doesn't require a medium all the time, but sometimes these souls that are adamant about staying, some of these ghosts that have been haunting places for a long time, are adamant about leaving. They're very comfortable where they were. This is my castle, for example. I'm not leaving my castle. This is my place. And we'll do things to scare people so that they leave and they can have that place back to themselves in peace. And that's what happens with houses. A lot. This is their space. They want to claim their space, even though it's no longer theirs and they can't own it in the physical sense on this plane. So it's not that God wants them to be confused either. It's just that they are. There are people on this plane who maybe get involved with drugs, for an example, and are confused and are addicted. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't mean that they cannot find a way to live in sobriety. It just means that they, for whatever reasons, whether the hard wiring or whether the choices that they're making, whatever that happens to be, they're kind of stuck in this rut and that they can't get out of it. Some souls never get out of that rut on this plane. Some souls are able to find a way out of their addiction, live with it every day because it's something that's with them every day. But it's one day at a time with them, trying to get through the rest of their soul's existence on this plane to learn the lessons that they're supposed to learn while they're here. So I hope that kind of answers your questions. If you want to talk about it more, happy to do so. But I think that kind of gives you a general basis of, this. God is benevolent. God is good. God is never going to try to punish someone in this way. But understand this is maybe the soul's process or the individual soul's journey in some way of trying to learn that being possessive of an object is not worth being on this plane in this half transition to move on. I'm going to give you one more example. Is I have encountered souls who have stuck around on this plane waiting for a loved one to pass so that they could be together. They're guiding them and stuff. But what they don't realize when they're stuck in between worlds, in between here and heaven, is that soul can sometimes cross. For example, if you had a husband and a wife and the husband died very early on, watch the husband grow up and maybe marry again, have children, do everything else, was there and trying to make sure that he had the best journey possible. That soul passes on and has a smooth crossing, everything else, but the soul that was there is still now left behind. They may choose at that point to maybe transition if they can, but sometimes they still don't know how. They're still stuck. And that's where sometimes a medium can be very helpful in just figuring out the way to get them to transition. And so it's hard to explain. It's not a one size fits all answer because there are so many variables involved in all these circumstances. But just know that this is not God's will trying to torture souls in this way. This has to do from a more human mind perspective and human soul perspective and human emotion perspective than it has to do with God's will. God's will is that you come and join heaven, if you want to call that heaven, or the greater good, the greater light. That's the wish, that's the want, that's the draw at the end of your life. But if you choose for whatever reason not to take that path, you can get stuck here until you find a way, either through, I won't go into great detail here, but there are many ways that you can transition over: through a medium, through your soul's evolution, through other aspects of things, through prayer and things of this nature, to make that move and transition into God's light. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Great questions. I appreciate those. And if there's any questions about the answers or what I've done, or want to talk more about that subject, I will let you go. It looks like we're kind of running out of time a little bit here. So one more time, I will just say, Rosie, thanks for joining. Join Rosie and I on the 13th of September for our Zoom event. I will be Rosie's guest at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be live and in person broadcasting from New York. And I can't wait to take that trip and that journey. And the tickets are, again, at rosieshapiro.com. Get online and do join us, because I think that you're going to have a great event by connecting with loved ones and talking with Rosie, and how we interact with one another, and talking about spirit and how we can bring additional hope to spirit and to the soul and to your health. So again, join us. We look forward to seeing you there. We'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good and lovely evening, and we'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Thank you.